it's the next level.
Hey, my name is Ross Marquand, and I play Red Skull. You are listening to Panels to Pixels podcast. Check it out.
What are you supposed to be, a clown or something?
Sometimes.
It's more like surfing and skating. I wish the rain would stop just once.
It can't rain all the time.
Eric?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Mark.
And I'm Laura.
And today we talk about the 1994 movie The Crow starring Brandon Lee. Now, this movie became infamous because Brandon Lee died during filming. Lee was killed when a prop gun was fired at him, during a specific scene. The film was almost completed at the time of his death, but they completed the film rewriting parts of the script, CGI implemented in the film, and use of stunt doubles to complete certain shots. Now, this movie has had a legacy over the years as being a cult classic movie for comic book genre films. And this came out at a time when pretty much comic books weren't like the big thing in film. So since it's at its 25th anniversary, we figured we would do this. Honestly, we should have put this out months ago because it came out in May. But through delays of podcasting, Lara was eager to help us out today, and we had to drop the idea of a roundtable. We were expecting to have a lot of people, but other podcasters have other things. So we'll have this out at least in time just after Halloween, so everybody could enjoy it for November.
It's good timing, it's almost Devil's Day.
Yeah. That would be Wednesday. Devil's Night.
Yes, day before Halloween.
Basically, we'll start off with the first question, which would be, what's your background or relationship with the 1994 movie The Crow? Lara, what do you have? I know you're a comic book fan, but...
Yeah, I'm a comic book fan, and I actually picked up the original comic sometime in probably the early 90s, because I think I was in my senior year in high school, so it must have been around 1990 or so, and I was a big comic book fan then. I was a big fan of kind of underground indie comics like, The Sandman and lots of the Vertigo comics and Dark Horse comics that were out at that time. And came across this one recommended from some of my friends who worked at the comic book store that I frequented, and found it really interesting and bought all. I think there are maybe only four to six issues. I'm not sure, but yeah, I read through all of them and then was really excited when I'd heard that the movie was coming out. I knew that they were making a movie about it. My husband, who actually decided to go see Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Had, I forget the name of the actor in it, but I think his last name was also Lee.
Jason Scott Lee.
So we were actually, so we were actually, and I believe that movie came out the year before The Crow did.
Yep.
We were getting ready to leave Field on the set while filming this movie. So as we were watching the Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, it was very ominous and strange because there is a scene there with Brandon, and he's kind of being chased by this ominous force that always seemed to follow Bruce Lee, and he's kind of looking at him, and the little boy playing Brandon runs away. And that's like all I could think about during the movie was that as we're watching this movie about the strange supposed.
So basically you went to the movie and you were seeing this Dragon movie. You saw the Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and all you could think about when you saw The Crow is young Brandon Lee when you saw The Crow, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it was a year later after we saw that because obviously he died on set, and then it took time to go back and produce the movie considering it hadn't been completed yet. So it was a year later, but it was right before we left to go see Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, that we found out about him passing away on set.
Yeah.
And it was just very strange and ominous. It always stuck with me.
That was within those few years, it was all Bruce Lee based a lot with the Dragon movie, and I think it was an anniversary of Bruce Lee at that point too. But Brandon was coming into his zone as far as an actor, doing Rapid Fire, and then he did another movie with Dolph Lundgren, and then he scored this where he was the leading character, and he did very well with it. Everybody thought of him as a leading man. This was the first time he was put in a leading man perspective in a movie, and they thought with the name Lee and him being the son of Bruce Lee that it would market well. And then unfortunately the movie was delayed for almost a year because originally it was filmed in 93. And it took them all that time to figure out how to complete the movie so that way it could be presented to an audience. And they had to use a lot of different things that we'll get into a little later.
Yeah.
My I was first introduced to the movie based upon the idea of the controversy, but I knew when it was coming out. I knew it was Brandon Lee, and I knew the name, and I had seen him in Rapid Fire, so I wanted to see it. Plus, when they started saying it was based after a comic book, made me wanted to go see it. Now, mind you, by that time, I was out of comic books. I wasn't collecting or anything. I hadn't done so in like 3 years or so. So I decided, a friend wanted to go. She had to go. So I went, and then after I saw the movie, I really enjoyed it. The movie was very good from when it came out. Very dark, very brooding, very gothic. And at that time, grunge music was the big thing. And on top of that, the music soundtrack was very good because you had a variety of different music. And I love music, and I was in a band at that time. So basically you had like Nine Inch Nails, Pantera, all this. And the soundtrack actually was pretty much almost like the movie in itself. You could just listen to the soundtrack and just picture images on certain things from the film. So that grasped my attention too, because I was in trade school at the time, and that was going around, and I listened to that soundtrack even before I saw the movie. So I was really intrigued by it, and I was happy. And I eventually I wound up buying the trade paperback and reading it and loving the actual story itself, but was a little bit upset for the fact that we didn't get a lot of what was in the comic in the movie. And we'll get into that too later.
Yeah, to this day, I still think that's one of the greatest movie soundtracks.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's something that I keep on my phone too. And a lot of people don't know what it is. Like, I've had my niece actually heard it, and she goes, "This is good stuff, Uncle Mark. What is it?" And I told her, and she started listening to some of it. My brother was like, "No, she can't listen to Pantera. No, she can't listen to Henry Rollins. No." I was like, "But it's a cover song. It's okay." But she got into it. Now she's a little older, obviously, so now she has the album.
Great. The girl's got good.
Yeah, she likes her music. So after your most recent watch, what was your impression of the movie now? Did it change compared to your first watching?
I really loved it when I first saw it. I think just because I was so familiar with the comic books, and I don't know, just the whole Brandon Lee story with him dying on set, and it had this melancholiness around it that was actually made me kind of love the movie more. I was a goth girl in high school, and all of this stuff just completely resonated with me, sort of the dark melancholy of The Crow and the soundtrack. I mean, Joy Division, Nine Inch Nails, The Cure. So, I mean, not Joy Division. Well, there is a Joy Division song on there, but yeah, that whole soundtrack.
Yeah.
That felt to me like the zeitgeist of the entire like early 90s, that explosion of alternative music, grunge and industrial and goth, all that was kind of their golden era right there, was the early 90s. And I was all about that.
Definitely.
So I loved the movie. I think I rewatched it maybe a month or so ago. Yeah. And still held up for me. I still thought it was great. I thought Brandon Lee's performance is just wonderful. I think I like it now better than I did when I first watched it, because at first I was just kind of absorbing the story and didn't really take the performance into account. But yeah, when I watched it, I was like, wow, he was really good in this.
Yeah, he was. It's a shame that, he passed away. To think exactly what he could have done with his career after that. And I don't see him just as like an action movie actor. I saw him more of a comedic actor.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually came from like Rapid Fire, because some of the scenes in Rapid Fire, he was a little bit comedic. There was a couple in The Crow itself,
Mm-hmm.
like when he looks at the detective and he goes, "You're still wearing your hat," and he's still in his underwear.
Yes. Or when he's
Stuff
smoking the
like that.
cigarette and he's like, "These things will kill you," and takes a
Kill you.
drag.
Yeah. I honestly, I still love the movie. I think it holds well after 25 years. I usually watch this movie at least once a year because, and you'll laugh, on Devil's Night.
Perfect.
But I just enjoy it for the fact that it was very well done. When I heard there was rumors that, Jason Momoa would take the role, possibly, it was like a year ago or just after Aquaman came
Mm-hmm.
out. I was not too certain that it would be played well. He was a bit fit, but he wasn't. I love Jason Momoa, but he's too gargantuan for the character, in my opinion.
Yes.
He'd literally break on his own guitar, while he's playing it. So, but I still think of the movie as being a classic, and I still love the comic book itself. And I still have the trade paperback that I bought back in 1994 after I saw the movie too. So things I hold on to.
Yeah, and I'll admit that this was probably the only role I ever saw Brandon Lee in, but that end scene where he's seeing Shelley and she's coming to him in the graveyard, and just how oh gosh, I was so taken by that scene. He plays it so well, just his pain and suffering, and then he sees her
Yeah.
and it all melts away, and I just thought that was beautiful, and agree with you that he could have done so much with his career.
Yeah, dramatic, comedic,
Mm-hmm.
not just action, honestly. I
Romantic
think of him. Yeah,
movies, I
romantic,
know.
definitely. He was a pretty boy, trust
Oh,
me.
he
I
was
know.
very handsome.
Oh, yeah. So, and he was taller than his father, from my understanding, too.
Oh,
So,
yep.
but
But that darn Lee legacy.
yeah, well, not really. We'll get into that later. I actually did some research into that, but
Oh,
I think
good.
it's like a curse in itself, but that's just me.
Hmm.
So, what do you know about any of the other Crow properties, like, comic books,
Hmm.
TV series, other movies, or
Hmm.
what do you want to add to that? Did you follow that after the movie?
I watched the one sequel afterwards with Vincent Perez
Okay.
called, I think it was City of Angels.
Yes.
And it was okay. It was following the story of Sarah, the little girl who was in The Crow.
Yep.
And she's an adult in this one. And The Crow, I mean, the whole mythos of The Crow now is that it is the spirit of vengeance, and it comes back to anyone who
Correct.
has died, you know, under some sort of violent way. And it's their way of coming back and taking vengeance. So The Crow can be anyone that the spirit inhabits. So I watched that one. It was pretty good, but after that, I just didn't really follow any of the other ones or the TV series or the comic books or anything like that. I
Yeah.
felt the comic book and the movie companion, the original one, were perfect, and I didn't think I needed any more after that.
Yeah, I agree. But to let all our listeners know, there were other comic book spin-offs in the 90s after the first run that Jay Obar. But Jay Obar was not really part of those runs. He pretty much banked on the idea where he licensed it out to other artists and writers. He basically oversaw what was going on. He just did the original and left it that way, and he thought that was all that needed to be, in his opinion. I
Hmm.
really appreciate that, and I like that idea myself, and that's how I keep it myself. I like the original, I like the book, but unfortunately, I decided to go on that rabbit hole and look at all that stuff, and over the years, I actually watched the sequels other than just City of Angels. I saw the other two sequels that they put out, and they were just, I didn't like them.
Hmm.
There was actually a TV show that came out after the movies, in between
Yeah.
the sequels, and it starred Mark Dacascos, called The Crow Stairway to Heaven. Now, it was another view of the Eric Draven legacy. It's as if the movie never happened, the way they treat it. but it only lasted from 1998 to 99 due to, lack of viewership and everything else. I have the actual box set of the series because I like the idea of Eric Draven and I wanted to see where it went, and it was discounted years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I give Mark Dacascos some credit. He did very well. It was kind of like those UPN 9 TV shows that they did back in the day, where they were low budget and they tried their best. Now, the story had heart, but the action sequences and the effects weren't that great. The stunts were good, and the acting was okay. And Mark Dacascos did all right, in my opinion. But if you guys are interested and you love the idea of Eric Draven, that would be another way to go. Like I said, the sequels, I wasn't a fan. I was not into the idea of a new Crow movie, especially since the last sequel that came out had Eddie Furlong from Terminator 2 fame in it, as well as a Crow-style character. And I forget the blonde girl from American Pie. She was in it as well, and it was just terrible.
Tara Reid?
Yes. Yeah, she was in it as well.
Okay, that's one I probably won't be touching.
Don't touch it. It's scary.
No, I like to keep the purity of what I enjoy without watering it down with a bunch of other stuff. So I'm probably good with just the movie and the comics.
Same here. I just stick with that. I actually lent the movie on DVD to my niece, and she goes, "It's dark." And I'm like, I like the music, but it's dark. Okay, all right. And my brother
Dark is in the lighting, or dark is in the content?
The content and the story.
Oh, well, she better not read the comic books then.
Oh, yeah. Well, considering we'll get into this in a little bit. So we're going to go into a little bit more interesting facts about the original movie as well as the comic. So what do you have to add?
There's a few differences between the movie and the comics. Like in the movie, Eric and Shelley are killed in their home rather than out on an abandoned road like they were in the comic books.
Yep.
The movie is far less brutal than the comic books, in my opinion, especially the killing of Eric and Shelley, which is just too brutal to go into. But if you read the comic, you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a couple of new characters in the movie, like Sarah, the little girl Sarah, Darla.
Oh, yeah.
Tintin was in the books, I think.
I think so,
he
too.
was.
Yeah.
But the weirdest addition to the movie was Mika or Micah. I can't remember how her name is pronounced. I just looked up her name in IMDb, but the weird sister
yeah.
of... Now, I thought his name was T-Bird because in the comic books his name is T-Bird, but apparently in the movie his name's Top Dollar.
Yeah, they changed that so that they'd have a larger, mob-style character. And then T-Bird was the second in command in the movie.
Ah, okay.
And then you had Tintin. What was it? Fun Boy?
Fun Boy.
And then I forgot the Skank.
I think there was a Tom Tom. Was there a Tom Tom, or am I just thinking of the comic?
I think you're.
I tried to review both really quickly.
Yeah. I've not read the comic in a long, long time. I really need to go over that again. But from my memory itself, I gone over a few things. They had great scenes in the film that were very similar to the comic book. Just they changed and altered it. They did have references to the comic that they didn't add to the film as well. And to give you an example, when Eric cuts himself, he cannot heal. And there's this kind of crazed moment in the comic where he goes crazy. You actually see it. And he cuts himself, but he doesn't heal from those wounds. And he winds up using tape or gaffer tape or electrical tape to cover his wounds. We do see those tape marks, and if you guys are listening, if you watch the movie, you'll actually see on Brandon Lee's hands, you'll see taped up going around his hands up into his arm when he's got his sleeves up to his elbow. And that was something that they edited out in the movie. They thought it would have been a little bit too graphic of a scene to put in the film. And they were afraid for the MPAA rating. It would have been rated R. But they did film those scenes, but they scrapped them, apparently. So, yeah, that was one thing that I had to look into. Yeah,
I think they added in Sarah, Darla, and Micah, whatever her name was, to add a few more female characters in. Because in the comic books, There's
No.
well, they do have a Darla, and they do have a Sarah-like character named Sherry, who's a little girl that the Crow has a discussion with. He doesn't have a history with her, but he does talk to her on a doorstep. But yeah, I think just bulked up those couple of female characters, and then Top Dollar's weird witchy sister.
Yeah. Yeah, they needed something a little bit freaky, I think, in this with the witchy sister so that she comes into play and gives Top Dollar something.
Hmm.
Sarah was added in, I think, to build the connection between, Eric and his girlfriend who had
Hmm.
passed. So that way there is a connection and it shows the love between both Eric and his girlfriend. And on top of that, the idea of the mother of Sarah, they brought that in. Darla was brought in. Yeah, it was kind of like alluded in the comic, but I think they brought in Darla in the movie for the fact that, well, she has to have a background. Where did she come from? She can't be just some kid on the street. So that way
Yeah.
they included her into the idea of this gang, and she was incorporated in some way via the bar. And that
Yeah,
made
that scene
sense.
of Darla with Fun Boy,
Yeah,
where they're getting high, and then
Eric comes in.
Eric follows her into the bathroom and, says, oh gosh, I wish I had written down the words, but some things are
Mother
like,
is the words on the hearts of all children. Hearts and lips of
I
all
think it's the
children.
name of God or the word of God on the hearts and lips of all
I
children.
think you're
I'm looking
correct.
for it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that exact line comes from the comic books. And I think they just expanded her character more so that she works in the bar and all
Yeah.
this stuff. But
And made it
yeah.
more impactful.
Hmm.
Now, you could correct me if I'm wrong. There was like some sort of person that approaches Eric once he comes out of the grave, and he's like a some sort of skull like focal person, or I could be wrong. I don't remember.
It
Somebody had.
might be Shelley. He has lots of flashbacks of Shelley, and there's one very um, graphic one in the comic books where he's dancing with her in her wedding gown,
Okay.
and she has the face of a skull.
All right. Well, in the movie itself, they employed well, there's a deleted scene. You can see it on YouTube, and they call it the Skull Cowboy scene, and that's a
Ah,
deleted scene that was originally intended for the film. It was filmed, but they took it out because it took away from the story. Like basically, the Skull Cowboy in the movie was to explain to Eric what he is there to do, and this happens all the time. And basically, telling him his story is that he has to take vengeance on those that took away from him from this brutal murder that happened to him a year previous. So that way they could right both him and Shelley's souls. But yeah, they kind of just edited that out because they felt that it kind of took away from the actual story itself of love and everything else. They just wanted to just like he's just basically driven just to, you know, take care of like what happened to him and Shelley, and so he could get back to Shelley and go to heaven.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the comic book, it's the crow. I mean, the crow that speaks to him that
Yeah. Yeah,
tells
I
him
think yeah,
certain
like a
things.
vessel or something. So they
Hmm.
might have did that purposely so that there's an actual figurehead or something. I took that
Yeah.
as something out of when I saw this and I first heard about this. I looked it up and went into it. I thought it was something out of like Ghost Rider, and it's like, oh wow, he's the original Crow or something. And but no, it
Oh,
wasn't
that's
that.
cool though. I'm gonna have to look that up on YouTube.
Yeah, you should because it's there. If you type in deleted scene in The Crow,
Hmm.
they'll show all the deleted scenes, and that's one of them. They left it in a bit, but the audio you get is basically film audio, and it's kind of grainy. So if you watch it on your big screen TV, it's gonna look kind of grainy in itself. On a smaller screen, it's a little bit better.
Cool.
So, but now we could go into how what had happened on set. So Brandon's death was it's still controversial within film to this day, but apparently the gun expert on the film had left early that day due to according to some, were budget cuts, but apparently there was a lot of drug usage on the set. And Brandon had made comments a lot on set when I watched this YouTube about it. The interviewer stated he would just talk about how half the budget went up people's noses, and he wasn't even part of it. There was a lot of questioning on it. But apparently the prop master was the only one on set that day when this happened. So the gun was never cleaned properly. So what had happened was, I guess what they do is they put a dummy bullet in there, has an explosive, but you'd have to clean it every time. But apparently somebody did not clean it, or they have not been cleaning the guns. And there was a piece of metal that was in the chamber. The gun was given to actor Michael Massey, also known as Funboy, for the rape or / killing scene that was done in the loft. And I guess that's why it's all over the place when they filmed it. So apparently he had a bag over the gun and he shot it. And the forensics officer that went into it, and you could see this on YouTube as well if you guys want to see, but basically it was all shrapnel, and they kind of redid the scenario in a safe environment, and they said that was worse than a regular bullet in itself because there was so many pieces in it and it would have scattered all over the place. So it just, of all things, happened to Brandon at that point, and they all thought he was still acting when it happened, and when he asked, "I need a doctor, I need an ambulance," and they rushed him, but there was so much they couldn't even find the shrapnel that was in him until they actually did the autopsy, and it took them a couple of days apparently. So it's a sad event that had happened, but that was the one thing that had happened, and it goes down in the legacy of film accidents that are out there. Like there's one with the Twilight Zone, like with Vic Morrow during the train scene in Twilight Zone. And,
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And there's a few others out there too. So a lot of people knock that up, but as being like another one of film's tragedies. And on top of
this, I was just wondering, is this one of the few tragedies where the lead was killed
yes,
in a on-scene accident?
correct. And I always say it as this is like the Lee family legacy of bad luck, because it was Bruce first, then Brandon, and I think Brandon has an actual sister too as well. And then Linda Lee had passed years previous, about, I would say a good like 6 years ago she passed away. But
wow.
yeah, but apparently it everybody calls it the Lee legacy because both of them died. Bruce Lee died before Enter the Dragon was actually completed. It had to play after he passed away. Same thing with Brandon. So there's all these conspiracy theories about what had happened, and like the Yakuza or whoever are after them or something. But I don't believe into that. I think it was just one of those things, and it just happened.
Yeah.
Do you have any other things that you could talk about for the comic?
Let me see here what I've got written down. Not so much the comic, but I've got a couple of, well, maybe a little bit about the comic, but some factoids about the comic and the movie.
Sure.
Unless you have these already. But I just recently found out that James O'Barr wrote the comic in a response as a way to cope with the death of his girlfriend at the time, who had been killed by a drunk driver.
Yes, that I knew, and it's sad. I think that's why he never really went back to do any more of this, because it's a bad reminder. Once he wrote it, he drew it, that was it.
Yeah. So out of tragedy came creativity, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the ending credits are dedicated to Brandon and Eliza. Eliza was his fiance, which makes the tragedy all the more sad, because Eliza was his fiance and they were planning to get married. Was it after the movie wrapped?
Yes.
No. So tragic. And then finally, I'm sure you know this, Mark, as a music aficionado, but the soundtrack was produced by a young Trent Reznor.
Yes, it was. And like you said before, he did a Joy Division cover and actually sparked my interest in Joy Division because that wasn't
Yeah.
part of my education in school. And I actually brought that up to one of my teachers while I was in trade school. And a lot of my teachers, well, they were producers, engineers in the professional medium. And my teacher, Rich Termini, he, of all things, played keyboards for Cyndi Lauper. He was on that infamous major album that she put out, and he did all the keyboards for Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And he wrote those, but he only got paid session work. But he actually, he was all into that whole industrial style of music, and eventually I got to meet a few people that worked with Trent Reznor, and they said that he is a very interesting person. Now, mind you, I only got to meet Wayne Static and hang out with him when he was an intern, but it comes from this. I basically felt the same way as what everybody used to say about Trent, and one of the engineers I worked with Trent, and they said he is very talented. And I think with the soundtrack picks of the actual regular music that they had there was amazing itself. So I think, if you want to go out there and get it, go get it. I'm sure you could download that music easily nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
It's
It's on Apple
Spotify.
Music, so check it out. But I did have a good decade or so long crush on Trent Reznor since I got into Nine Inch Nails in my senior year, about the same time I got into The Crow. I loved Pretty Hate Machine, their first album. I think I played the hell out of that, probably broke the cassette tape, had to go buy another. And all throughout his musical career, I just thought he was a genius. But was a bit enamored with him for some time as well.
It's I still enjoy it. I still play it. So I recommend out anybody who has not actually watched the movie and you're just listening to the podcast. Why are you listening to this podcast anyway? Go watch the movie. Actually, go buy the book. Go get the trade. You could probably download it at this point and get it from Amazon. And read the book or read the trade, and then go watch the movie. It's out there. It's on iTunes as well, and you can watch it on.
And
your
if you're
Apple
not
TV.
up for horror, this is a good Halloween night movie as well.
Exactly. Okay, so that was our Crow review this evening or day or whenever you're listening to this. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm Mark.
I'm Laura.
And this was Panels to Pixels. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Who are you?
I'm the one who strung your chief of police up.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
You're 90 fucking years old. How the fuck did you hang him?
I am 105, and you curse too much.
You didn't kill him.
I did, all by myself.
How?
Psychic powers. I can manipulate material with my mind.
Is that right?
Maybe, I'm Dr. Manhattan.
He lives on fucking Mars. And he can't do that. Look like us.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Mark.
I'm Steve.
And, well, you just heard the Crow 25th anniversary podcast review. So it was with me and Lyra, and I have to thank Lyra for doing that. Now we're on to Watchmen Season 1, Episode 2, which is entitled Martial Feats of Comanche Horsemanship.
It's a mouthful, man. I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, I tried to say that 3 times, and it was just like, martial feats of misery. Yeah. I'm just like, what? So, yeah. But yeah, martial feats of Comanche horsemanship. There we go. I got it once. It's good. For those that are not aware, why are you tuning in? Well, you just listened to The Crow, so that's cool. I'm glad Laura and Mark got to do the review of The Crow. They both love that movie and that whole series and genre. I have not been as quite affiliated with it as though they were, so I'm really super glad they got to do that. But this is a spoiler-full podcast for Watchmen, Season 1, Episode 2. So if you have not listened... God listened, leave it in. I don't care. If you have not watched episode 2 yet of Watchmen, why are you listening to us? I'm going to ask this every week. But hey,
Everybody does.
go back and watch the episode. Watch the episode again, because gosh, there's going to be things that we missed. There's going to be things that you missed that hopefully we can point out to you. But this is a spoiler-full podcast, so we are going to talk about all the cool things that happened in this episode.
Cool. And before we get into our top 5, we're going to go about things that we liked about the actual episode overall.
Yeah, I really loved the pacing, that the pacing has changed a little bit from the first episode to this second episode. Things kind of slowed down a little bit. We got a lot more dialogue. We got a lot more character interaction. We got this flashback of Angela, but there was a lot of really cool director's things that were done in this episode that made it very, not just cinematic, but theatrical, that I really, really liked.
Yeah, definitely. The way it was filmed, the way the drama is within each character and how they talk to one another, and basically getting down to the point of each character and how they are affiliated with one another. It actually brings the story together. And it's not just Angela-centric, if you think about it. It's not pointed or around her for the most part. You see other characters, especially characters that are sitting there eating dinner on their couch with their mask on just above their nose.
Yeah, that was very much a callback to Rorschach in the Watchmen movie and on the comic. When we see him several times in the comic, we see him eating with that kind of his mask pulled up, and then just all you can see is his mouth going.
The part that I have would be, this was more Angela focused in some respect, where we get to know and find out who this person is. We're seeing it through mostly her eyes at some points, from what I could see. It's her investigation of what's going on. And I really like that aspect, especially that it's a female-driven one. And not only just a female-driven one, an actual black actress or character. And it's centered around that whole Oklahoma riot, or the
massacre, the Tulsa
massacre that happened.
Yeah. It's really, really cool that we have that in this day and age, and with all the themes that this show is developing, that they have, that the lead character is this, female black woman. And that's amazing. Female black woman. All women are female. Anyway, that we have this lead female black character is just amazing. And you would think that the show, with having someone like Don Johnson in the cast, you would think that Don Johnson is going to be, or Tim Blake Nelson is going to be the big names, but that's not the case. Regina King is the big name. Louis Gossett Jr. is huge for me. I just love him from way back in Iron Eagle to everything he's done just about. Silverado, not Silverado, that was Danny Glover. I keep getting Danny Glover and Louis Gossett Jr. mixed up. That's not right.
They're around the same age.
It's true.
About it.
But so there's just this fact that not only are we seeing things from her perspective, but we're also seeing other people's perspective of her. Just like when they zip up the body bag with Judd's body in it, the camera angle is up and she is in the center of that picture. You got her on in the center, and then Red Scare on one side and Looking Glass on the other. But she is definitely the central figure that we can see through the eyes of that dead body. So that was really cool.
Yeah. So I think we should get on to our top 5.
Absolutely. Why don't you start?
Sure. My number 5 would be the people protesting scene. Was really intense. That scene just showed people taking action into their own hands. Regina King's character, Angela, taking action on the protesters. That was really intense, thus forcing her to seek her roots and the history of what happened there. When she goes and I guess the computer asks her for tissue to see if her relation and stuff.
Yeah, you can hear as she's walking up the steps there, and you see the protesters with their signs. And I was a little surprised that we didn't have kind of an altercation there, but it seemed very peaceful, even though there were some very harsh words being said to her, even as she's walking through that crowd. So yeah, getting into that building where that museum is, and where obviously they're telling the story of the 1921 Tulsa massacre. My number 5 was just the White Knight flashback that we get to see. And they mentioned this on TV podcast industry. So I want to give them a shout out for noticing this. And then I noticed it on my second and third watches, that it's when she's clinging to the body of Judd and the camera shifts to that scene where she's clinging to her husband, and it's on the attack of the White Knight. So I thought that was really cool direction. But one of the things that stood out to me in this scene, we get this flashback, is that Judd tells her that he got his, that she got hers with the stabbing in the head, which we saw, and that he bled out. But there was a second guy in her flashback. There was a second guy with that double barrel shotgun aimed at her head that she passes out. And the next thing we know, she wakes up and she's in the hospital room. So I'm assuming we're going to get another flashback to tell us what happened to that guy, or who that guy is, because there's no answer to that, because he came out of nowhere. And, it sounded like from what Judd says, it sounded like it was kind of one guy attacking each, because he said, you got your guy, I got my guy, in like that, in that kind of way. So I'm wondering if there's some, either unreliable narration there, in that her flashback may be unreliable with the second person, or, who that second person is, that and who took that person
definitely. out. Yeah, there's a missing element that we're not seeing. Maybe there's more to that flashback. Maybe it's another character that we'll encounter later on that fills that void to explain that whole story, because obviously we want to see how that story began and ended, and to see where she was. So I'm hoping we'll get that eventually. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So your number 4?
That would be the scene with Louis Gossett Jr.'s character with Angela. I thought that was really interesting, and just like you, I love to see Louis Gossett Jr., but he was sitting there in the wheelchair where Don Johnson's, body was hung.
Yeah, I when he's sitting there, you're talking about when he's sitting under the body of Don Johnson. Okay.
Yeah, basically, he knows something. And it's funny that he has to take pills to gather his memories, I guess. But, it's like, it just brings on questions to me of like, he has all these issues, but was he once part of the Minutemen or part of that crew at one point?
Yeah, I have this later, either in my notes or in my top 5 with Will, because I have a theory on Will that I'll go on record on our podcast. I've already gone on record on another podcast about this. I think Will is Hooded Justice. I think what we're going to find out is that the history has been skewed as to who Hooded Justice is, and that it actually is Will. It is a black man, not a white man, as depicted in the American Hero story and as we saw in the trade comic book. There's some things that were pointed out on another podcast that may not indicate that he could be Hooded Justice, but I'm going to stick to my guns. And if I'm wrong at the end, I'll admit that I'm wrong, or if it was a misdirection that they got me, that Damon Lindelof got me. But I really, really think that Louis Gossett Jr., that Will is Hooded Justice. That's going to be my, I'm going to stand on that until it's proved otherwise.
I feel you when it comes to that. I believe you. You have a better keen sight into this than I do.
I just, and maybe the problem is that it's too on the nose that he's Hooded Justice, but there's enough people that don't think he is, and there's enough evidence that he's not, that I'm going to stick to it. I really am. So that brings us to my number 4. And it's just that whole roundup there at Nixonville. And that was just brutal. It was scary in regards to what the police did and how the police reacted. Even though they were just tasering people, it reminded me a lot of the pictures we see and the things we've heard of, like the riots against the Vietnam War in the 60s and the early 70s, when police when they fired on, police fired with rubber bullets onto a group of protesters. It was very similar, and it really was scary. And then, of course, we have Sister Knight standing out saying, no, she's not going to participate. And then when that guy kind of makes a move on or actually makes a move on Looking Glass, I guess, she just goes off on that guy. And it was way over the top what she did. But then when she gets in the car, it really looks like she even scared herself.
Yeah, you can see it on her face.
With that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she sees the cup and she's like, okay, I got to go figure out what's going on here.
Did you ever notice, though, with her mask, it's painted on?
Yeah, she did that when we see her getting dressed there in the bakery, when she has Will, when she's brought Will in and she's got him handcuffed. She sprays kind of a makeup thing, and it's very I don't know if it meant to be a callback to it, but in the Blade Runner, the movie, the first Blade Runner movie, that's what Daryl Hannah, she kind of sprays some kind of a makeup thing across her eyes, a very similar black strip across her eyes. So it's kind of cool that we have this Sister Knight who's doing this thing where she's spraying this black across her face, and then she's lifting a black mask, which is similar, over the bottom part of her face, like what the other police wear. Hood. And then she's got the hood as well. So yeah, that's her costume, is this black face paint and then pulling the mask up over her face as opposed to pulling it down or I guess.
And it's very simplistic. It's nothing extravagant. Like, who's the character with the mirrored face? I forgot his name. Looking Glass has that silver wannabe Rorschach mask.
Yeah, it's very Rorschach-like in that it reflects what other people are seeing. The joke in the first episode when Judd is tying his tie and he tells him, pull your mask down, and he uses the mirror face so he can straighten his tie out.
Also, too, the call back to the different costumes. I think Panda has a regular costume, and we see him when they're actually having like a meeting, and he's got a panda mask on him.
It's like a panda mascot head that he's cut the bottom part out, and then Red Scare, it's like a red ski mask that he's got. Oh, like it's the most simplistic thing you could ever do. Like, he's got, it's just, some of their costumes are very comical in a way, but at the same time, they're reminiscent of what real life people would do. It's always funny to me when we see these, especially it happens in the Marvel. Well, it's a Spider. I know you're a huge Spider-Man fan, but it's one thing that bugs me about the Spider-Man, and they kind of solved it in the current Spider-Man thing, that when you see him and he's got his like homemade costume, and then Tony Stark brings him in a real costume. But that's what I would do, is I'd have like a red T-shirt with a blue vest over it and blue pants and a ski mask that I cut the eyes out of. That would be my kind of thing. So I think we're to your number 3.
My number 3 would be the time jumps, but it's very interesting within the story. We see the 50s with, I think, is Red Crimson, but...
No, see, I don't think that was a time jump. I think we're seeing the American hero story depicted.
Okay.
That was on the TV. Like, that's why they had that whole disclaimer at the beginning of it, where it said, acts of violence. And so I think that was Hooded Justice attacking those guys in the grocery store.
The robbery within the grocery store. He protects the people, but with major violence. You could see the bloodshed. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was that disclaimer for people not to watch it, but he tells his story about his thirst for justice, and it shows it to no end of how he was ready to wreak justice on those.
Yeah.
So that was, to me, that was pretty interesting to see, because it's a bit of history within the actual episode.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more of that as we go on through the seasons. That's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah. And your number 3?
So my number 3, is just the whole idea. I think we talked a little bit about the reparations, the reparations that were payments to the families of the Tulsa race massacre. I think we kind of went back and forth last week. I really thought it was about the White Knight killings, but no, we do find out today for sure it's all about the 1921 race massacre. And so people can go into this museum. They can have their DNA tested to see if they are a living victim of the violence that occurred on that day, or if they are a descendant or have ancestors who were victims of that violence. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And of course, she, it's so funny. It asked her name and she just says Will. And then it doesn't really get any further ID of her, but later we get that reveal that Will is her grandfather, because, the voice comes back on the phone and says, yes, your DNA is confirmed as being, you are a victim. We know that he was the child of the couple that were apparently killed in the massacre. And so he is due reparations for that. And then the voice says, you have 2 ancestors and 2 descendants. Do you want to know? If you want to know who those descendants are, but she had to tell them a name. And so she gives them her name. And of course the voice comes back. She says, Angela Abar. And the voice comes back and says, Angela Abar is your granddaughter. And so suddenly we get the connection between her. But now I wonder about who's Will's other ancestor, because it said there were 2 and she only gave them one name. Oh, and by the way, I ran this back and watched it 3 times. There definitely is something going on with Will, because he reaches into the pot of boiling water and pulls an egg out.
Yes.
With his bare hand.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Like I said, the first time I saw it, I was like, huh? And then the second time I was like, no, I got to run that back. And I run it back and I go, yeah, then he crushes the egg with his hand and scatters the shell and then eats the egg. And did he just pull that out of the pan with his bare hand? Yep. He just pulled that out of the pan with his bare hand, and then he broke it with his bare hand again. He kind of rolls it on the counter a little bit, but he definitely used his own hand to just
like his nerve endings were dead or something.
I don't know. Either that or he's got some kind of a pain or threshold, or his hands are, I don't know. There's obviously something more going on with him than meets the eye.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, my number 2 would be the reenactment of Dr. Manhattan's creation with Ozymandias on Ozymandias' servants. That was disturbing, especially how, if you look at it, they all look like a bunch of clones.
To say the least, yeah, they're all exactly the same.
Apparently, he made clones of his servants, and they all want to cater to his delusional whims. And they are eager to fill the roles of somebody who winds up getting blasted or cooked in that little box to show how Dr. Manhattan came to be.
It's the goofiest thing, isn't it? Because the guy says, he says, would you like to be, what's your name? And he says Montrose. And he's like, would you like to be the next Mr. Phillips? And he goes, I'd be honored to be the next Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, dude? Yeah, I'm just, this whole, I am waiting, and I'm sure we're probably going to have to wait till the last episode to get the full reveal of what is going on here. Maybe we'll get it a little bit earlier, but they're definitely, we have definitely ventured into a Twilight Zone.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird.
I don't know who this guy is. Well, and that's the thing, from what other podcasts have said, and if you go to IMDb, I don't want to spoil this for you, but this has already been spoiled for if you've done any kind of research on this show, that Jeremy Irons is playing Adrian Veidt.
Yep.
Ozymandias from the comic book. But yet we have not had him be called Adrian Veidt. He's been called the Master. If you look at the descriptions of some of the episodes, they call him the Lord of the Manor. So I'm just waiting for the reveal of what this is really all about. So that brings us to my number 2.
Yes.
Just the fact that I noticed that this was the same director for these first 2 episodes. And I want to go back to what I said earlier, that how different the pacing was of these really amazed me, because at first, when the first time I watched this episode, and I was like, man, this is really a departure, a different from the first episode. I thought, man, it must be a different director. And when I looked it up, I was like, no, it's the same director. So I was really surprised to see it's a female director at that, that any director would be able to change gears so quickly between these two episodes, that just because that first episode, there's just so much going on. And then in this episode, there's just a lot of character development.
Oh, definitely. And that's what we need. That's what you want from a show, is like once you start it, you want to know the background, who these characters are, where they came from. Because at this point, with Angela and Will and like even Don Johnson's character, I'm sure we're going to get something more out of that.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
These characters, we don't know them from a hole in a wall. All we know is the comics at this point. And obviously in reference to like Dr. Manhattan, and eventually they're probably going to top on those events of what happened within the comic book. So
I would hope we're going to get something besides the Master's depiction of it, that we're going to get some other mention of Dr. Manhattan, that somebody is at least going to acknowledge that he exists, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to my number one.
My number two? Or
No.
you? No, I did my number two. You did your two.
Did I?
Yeah,
Yes.
my number one.
Your
I
number
guess.
one. Your number
Okay.
one. Right.
Yeah. Well, basically, you already talked about it. That would be that ending, which would be, is Louis Gossett Jr.'s character, Will, Angela's grandfather, perhaps? Or is he in some sort of relation with her? And that's what I started thinking towards the end.
Well, I mean, as long as that DNA was correct, which it seems a little weird that you'd be able to get enough DNA off a cup like that for a decisive test, but I guess you can. I mean, I know there's a lot of today's technology has gone crazy, but we don't see as there's a weird technological thing going on in this world. And I know I've looked a little bit at the PDpedia on HBO.com, that there was a lot of things about after the squid attack in the 80s that they thought technology had a hand in that. So they kind of slowed down the advancement of technology, or at least certain technologies maybe, because obviously the DNA resequencing, the DNA cataloging has happened. I mean, I was in the military. My DNA has been cataloged, but I didn't think there's that many people other than, like I said, government or military that had their DNA actually cataloged by the U.S. government, you know?
Yeah.
So I just found that's another interesting thing, that they were able to read a lot of that out of it. So that brings us to my number one.
Yes.
And just that KKK outfit that Angela finds in Judd's closet, you know, and then she brings it back to the bakery with her, and she kind of throws it at Will, and she asks if Will placed it there, and we get that amusing line from him where he goes, well, what floor was it on? Because, you know, I have a problem with stairs. And she's like, well, you know, but you did kill and hang up the chief. And he's like, oh yeah, I did do that too. So, you know, I'm really curious. It's just like you just said earlier, for every answer, we get 4 more questions. You know, for every answer we get, like you said, we have the answer. We know Will is her grandfather. How is that possible? You know, he says something like, your parents never told you anything about me, did they? And she just kind of is like, no, I didn't know who you are. And so it is interesting. Like I said, for every answer, we get 3 or 4 more questions.
Yeah, that is true. So
you had a quote here that you really liked?
Yes. Well, what Angela says to Will when he was looking for his pills, and he goes, can't you just float those pills over to yourself?
Yeah, that was great when he's like, well, maybe I'm telekinetic, you know,
Yeah.
and she's like asking him all these questions about, well, how did you get him up there? What did you do? How did you this and that? And he's like, and so it just, you can, by the end of this episode, when we find out that they're related, you can definitely tell that they're related, you know, because they just have these quick back and forth. They have a really great interaction between the two of them. I don't know if they've done anything before together or not, or if they just had such a good chemistry acting wise, not romantic wise, but acting chemistry wise, was really, really good between the two of them.
Yeah. And the only thing I have for notes would be, and I think you probably answered it with them, but you could tell everybody, but I thought Angela's daughter is lighter skinned than she is. I was wondering who was her father. Was it Jed? And with Angela's reactions, it makes me think so, but I wondered if we would see, that come into play for future episodes, but you could answer that because...
Yeah, those are her partner's kids, her partner who was killed in the White Knight. Those are not her and her husband's children, because when she comes to in the hospital, she asks about Doyle, who I'm assuming was her partner, and Judd says he says the wife's name. He says they were in bed. That's where we found them. And then he says Christopher took his sister and the baby and hid in the closet. And so that's the three kids. Because then she says Topher. He likes to be called Topher, not Christopher. And so that's when later on when she comes into his room and she tells him that Judd is dead. He says, don't tell Angela, or not Angela, the other two kids. He says their names. Don't tell them. I will tell them tomorrow. Yeah. For some reason he doesn't want to tell them on that day. So yeah, it was a good pull. It was one thing I think it was in the first episode that I noticed there's a difference, like there's something not, or it might have been the beginning. I know there was a point where I had that same question. I was like going, those kids are really light skinned to be the progeny of two, black parents. Yeah. So, I had a couple of notes here I thought was kind of interesting is, one of the actors, when they're showing that reenactment of the grocery store robbery, one of the actors, looks a lot like Rorschach. He's got the red hair and the freckles. I'm sure it wasn't meant to be. I'm sure it's just an Easter egg to the comic. Mm-hmm. But it definitely, that actor really did. Like when I saw it the third time I watched this episode, I was like, that kid looks like the way they portrayed, looks like Rorschach, So I'm like, that kid. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I noticed when they're attacking, or when he's talking to Nixonville through the bullhorn, that Red Scare actually has a badge. He wears a badge around his neck on like a dog tag chain around his neck. So he actually has like an actual badge that he wears. Yeah, like a
badge chain, and it's hanging around his neck.
It's actually like a policeman's badge or a detective's badge or something. And that when Angela was driving to the crime scene, the reporters are banging on her window, the window of the Monte Carlo, and they're calling her detective. So the impression I got is that these masked vigilantes they're not just masked vigilantes, they're actually members. And I think we might have talked a little bit about this in the last episode, that they are actually members of, most of them are actually members of the police force. Like we said, Panda's looks like he's an actual police officer. We see that Red Scare has this badge, even though Angela has said she's retired. Apparently, as Sister Knight, we haven't seen her carry a badge yet, but there's definitely the implication there. The reporters think she's a detective. So I thought that was interesting. And then I absolutely love anytime we get to see a cameo from Jim Beaver. I absolutely love that. He is the man that's on the porch. I don't know if he's meant to be the kid's grandfather or their uncle or what, but he's on the porch and he talks to Angela for a few minutes. And, Angela says, can we take a rain check? And he's like, I'll take a real check. Like it's my time for visitation with the kids. So obviously he is either a grandparent or an uncle, or he has some sort of relation to Doyle, to the children's biological family. And so she gave him a check to get him. So I hope that's not just a one-off. I hope we get to see more of Jim Beaver, because I love him as an actor. He did a quick cameo on the last episode, or the second to the last episode of The Boys. Mm-hmm. He's been a regular on the TV show Supernatural, which I love for years, and just love seeing Jim Beaver.
Yeah, definitely. So as a whole for the series so far, what are you thinking?
It's excruciating having to wait week to week um, for this. I already kind of talked about that. I think Will is the original and the real Hooded Justice that the portray. So I'm really excited to see. And like I said before, every time we get an answer, we get 3 more questions with that answer. It's just, I'm excited to see where this season is going to go. What are we going to do with this? I'm torn because I know that Damon Lindelof, the creator, he was really involved in a show called The Leftovers, which was on HBO, which was really good, which did like 3 seasons and then was done. He was part of the group that did Lost, but I think he's learned some things since then. And so I'm excited to see where they go. I hope that they have either this is going to be a one-off miniseries, or if they're going to do multiple seasons, that they already know exactly how many seasons they're going to do and how they're going to end it and what they're going to do with it. Because I really think that's the worst thing about some TV shows is they just go on too long.
Oh yeah,
or they get cut short.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like there's no in between. It's either too long or too short. There are certain shows that well, luckily we had it with Jessica Jones, where at least we got a complete 3 seasons.
Right.
And, at first when they started with Daredevil, they wanted to do 3, but they wound up eventually just putting it at 4. Mm-hmm. But they left us hanging.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, and like one of my favorite TV shows of all time is ending. It's in their final season, but it's the 15th season. But they had a way of every 5 or 6 seasons, they didn't revamp the whole show, but they kind of did. They kind of would do a thing where they would change things up, where the showrunner would change and it would become fresh again. So that I think that was a great model of a show that could run a long time and stay fresh, in my opinion.
Yeah. So for me, I'm just loving the show as it is. It's completely crazy and bonkers. It's history filled along with, the genre of the comic books, but we have the subtext of political and historical events. Obviously, one particular historical event, but I'm assuming that they're going to wind up throwing in more. If this does go on to multiple seasons, I'm hoping that we get to see something like that. Not just one state and city area. I'm hoping like maybe New York or Chicago or even in California or Texas.
It would almost be interesting, if they do multiple seasons, it would be interesting to see if they pick a different socio-political topic. Like this season so far anyway is definitely racism. That's the big socio-political kind of problem that they're looking at, is this idea. But one of the things I love about the show as well is there is a balance to it. It's not purely poking. It's not purely making the conservative point of view look bad, or making the liberal point of view look bad. It's kind of saying, hey, both extremes are not good. Neither extreme is good.
Exactly.
The extreme, the fact that, it drives me crazy. I can't believe that they were able to get some law passed that allows them to lock police officers' guns down until they get permission to use them. That is just like, that's
in that very first episode. It's like, hey, it's like, Panda, can you release my gun? And it took him how long? But that ended him, because by the time he got to that gun, he was gone. I
mean, I can see where our world is could go to that way, but then that's a scary thing for if you're a cop. But then the other side of it, when you see the other side of going way too far the other direction, to where we have these cops just showing up at this it looks like a trailer park homeless camp, and they just basically go in and just arrest everybody. They're just, we don't care if you're a member of the cavalry or not. We're taking you all in, and we're going to question everybody. That's just, it's so there's these extremes that they're showing us that the extremes it's not good to have either extreme. And so I like that. I like that it's very balanced in my opinion.
It is definitely balanced, and I like that idea. Unlike in state of events of the world or this nation now. But at least, to me, at least they have that good, keen insight as they're writing this. They're balancing it between and showing both sides. And you don't really get that. It's like, I always state this if there's like a problem within a relationship or whatnot, there's always a he said, she said, or he and he said, or her and her said.
Right.
But there's two truths, his, hers, or his, or hers, and then there's always that real truth in between. And I'm glad that they approach this with how they're writing the show so far, because it shows you a balance between both. And obviously there is some sort of missing element that the whole story is going to unravel in the end. And I just like how that kind of storytelling is coming through.
Yeah, very cool. All right, you got some comic talk?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Obviously, Joker, the movie, came out and it's getting a lot of nods to Oscar nominations and things of that nature, being heralded as one of the top grossing rated R films that are out there, and especially a comic book genre one. But it came out about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, actually probably when I was stuck in Atlanta for the con. But John Carpenter's The Joker comic came out, and it's a one-off. And that came out recently. I was not able to get a copy. I was hoping to. I went to the comic book shop with my coworker, and we both asked, and they had one copy, and unfortunately they didn't. I said, "You take it, Eric." So he wound up getting it. But oddly enough, it was one of those where it was for promotional use only. So they handed it to him for free.
Oh, nice.
So I'm looking to get the one of those that I could find online. I think there's a hardcover based one, which I would love to get in case of in the event that I actually get to meet John Carpenter and someday and have him sign it.
Ooh, there you go. There's a get for a con. John Carpenter, man.
Actually, he was at Monster Mania, New Jersey last year.
Ooh,
and our
nice.
friend Jamie wanted to go see him, but I couldn't make it that weekend. And she goes, "Oh, if you go, you got to go." And I heard the line wasn't really that huge. So he seems to be doing these things more and more. So
nice.
I'm hoping eventually. But it's highly regarded by many a reader. So I recommend those of you out there like me, I'm going to have to go search online on Amazon and order one. So
cool.
It should still be available for order. They have limited edition ones that are outrageously priced because you can get it signed by John Carpenter, but they're like $100 and things of that nature. And they're limited edition. And like I stated, the Joker movie, awesome. I have not yet seen it, but everything I'm hearing,
it's good.
It's heralded as one of the best. I plan on seeing it. I just have not gotten to it with, obviously, like I said, I went to the con, and after I got back, you get that whole, you need a vacation from your vacation. So I was back into work mode, and they kind of inundate you with work because you took time off.
Exactly.
But yeah, eventually I'll get to it, and I highly recommend it to it because a lot of my friends have been telling me, like, dude, you need to see this. So
it's
I'm
good.
telling you, everybody out there, guys, go see it.
I liked it. So.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all that I have for this week for Comic Talk. But maybe you could tell people how to get in touch with us.
We can be heard on Spotify, Google Play, Apple iTunes, or whatever podcast player of choice you use. If there's a chance to give us a rating, give us a good rating on there. If you can write it out and they send us a notification that we got a review, we will read it on the podcast. You can check out our website at www.panelstopixelspodcast.com. Right now, that will redirect you to our Facebook page, but eventually we will have extra content up there for you to see and hear. Also, you can submit your theories through our Facebook group. We do a Facebook post each week for the episode. It'll have the episode title. It'll have the date that we'll be recording, and it'll have the deadline for your feedback on that post. So just reply to that post and give us your comments on the episode. That is at our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/panels2pixels. You can also email us at panelstopixels1@gmail.com. That's panelstopixels1. The TO is spelled out right there in the middle, and the number 1@gmail.com.
Or you could call and leave us a voicemail at 845-350-2095. Again, that phone number is 845-350-2095.
Where else can we be heard, Mark? Or where else can people hear you?
Yeah, well, you could hear me. I'm a co-host on the Walking Dead Talk Through with Brian Malash on Talk Through Media. We review The Walking Dead each week. This actual podcast will stay on the Next Level Podcast Network, but there's always a link. We always share everything on our Facebook page to what we do on Talk Through Media, as well as Walking Dead Talk Through on our Panels to Pixels podcast Facebook page. You could hear us at pretty much for Walking Dead Talk Through on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I believe you could hear us on Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and I think Spotify as well. Yeah, we're still on Spotify. So keep in touch here or go to talkthroughmedia.com website and leave some feedback directly on the actual Talkthrough Media website. We have a phone number there as well.
And you can hear me right here, of course, every week. We're covering whichever TV show that week we're reviewing or movie. I also send in feedback to various other podcasts. I send in feedback to Mark's podcast on Walking Dead Talk Through. I send in audio feedback to Walking Dead Cast, and usually try to get something to TV Podcast Industries for their Watchmen review, as you've heard me mention earlier.
So that's our show this evening tonight, and this was a double one. I don't know if we're able to do that again, but we gave you double the fun. Got you The Crow in the very beginning and The Watchmen Season 1, Episode 2 in the last half. So all I could say is thanks everybody for listening. I'm Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And this was Panels Pixels. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.